Kate Sturgis from Brokenwood. Thanks for having a bit of a chat to me.
Thanks for having me.
Kate, we're drinking this wonderful little rosado that you make at Brokenwood. I love it because I think I actually prefer rosato over rosé. But for people who don't really know the difference about the style and the type of grapes used, explain why you made a rosado at Brokenwood and what grapes you used.
So I guess the reason we went with rosato rather than rosé is we're using those Mediterranean varieties. So this wine started as a very, very small make. We were making some Nebbiolo from our vineyard down in Beechworth as a table wine. And the vintage crew in 2015 sort of got a bit bored waiting for the Nebbiolo to ripen, and they made all of the other wine that they had to make down there that year. They were just waiting for the Nebbiolo, so we sort of threw them a bit of a bone and said, like, oh, pick a couple of panels, make your own little rosé, it'll be your own wine for this year, something sort of fun to keep you going until you pick the Nebbiolo later in the month. And so they foot shred it, pressed it off, and it turned out to be this quite delicious little number that we then made more of the next year and the next year.
Yeah, then you took credit for. Then you came. Once you discovered it was delicious, you went, well, I was always part of the master plan.
My brainchild. I just really wanted to make this wine.
Kate, it is. I like Rosato because it does have that, those Mediterranean grapes. I think Sangiovese, for me, Sangiovese and Nebbiolo make some of the most pleasant drinking rosé styles of wine. But within the style of Rosato, anyway, what are you trying to accomplish as a winemaker? What are you trying to express in that bottle?
So I guess for all of our wines, what we want is it to speak of the varieties. So Nebbiolo has this really beautiful sort of orangey color when it's pressed off as rosé, as rosato, and the Sangiovese sort of more pink. But the two of them combine and sort of have this really like interesting saline kind of character on the mouthfeel. I think like really crunchy, bright acidity, but it still has a bit of phenolics at the finish that just makes it like a bit more of a serious wine than just kind of candy water. So it's sort of all in that more savory kind of spectrum. We ferment it all to dryness, so there's no sugar in the final wine. And I think that just all kind of works together to make something that's a real like great food pairing rather than being sort of that sweeter sort of classic Aussie sort of style of rosé. Yeah,
I mean, let's talk about that because in It Is God the Wine, I talk about how I love rosato and about how when I use this wine, that it's it's such a great food match, and it's but it's also too very, very dry, and the color and the grapes don't necessarily reflect a sweetness. So do you reckon that is still a bit of a misconception, Kate, that people see rosé and unless it's like super pale, they worry that it has got like a residual amount of sugar, that it might have that sweetness, and they kind of are put off a bit by it, particularly maybe men?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I can't blame them because some of them do have that sweetness. It is always a risk if you don't already know the wine or know the wine style, that it might not be something that you enjoy. But that goes the same for sort of all wines. That there's a risk in every bottle unless you already know it. And I certainly am guilty of sort of going back to the same things because it's safe. And I know that is a wine that I'll love when I don't want to think too much about anything. But I think once you do know that those rosato styles are generally drier wines, it sort of gives you then a smaller spectrum to choose that risk from. So it's just balancing it a bit more to make it a bit easier of a decision.
Yeah, definitely. Even if I'm in a bottle shop and I'm, looking to get a rosé, I mean, I know obviously, you see the Provence style, which is that really, really kind of pale, peachy
Yeah.
color, and we know that to be super dry. And it's
Yeah.
usually, French, and it's cheap, and you may or may not like it. But then once you start seeing different colors, you don't know whether it's got the sweetness. So that's what I often will look for a rosado, knowing that it will be drier, even if the color is a little bit brighter. But Kate,
Yeah.
let's just get back to the fact that, I talk about this in the show as well, that unfortunately, there has been or is a stigma with Australian men drinking rosé.
Yeah.
It was,
Rosé.
yeah,
Did you miss the movement?
yeah, yeah. The brosé movement is on, and full force, and so it should be, because it is such a delicious style of wine to drink. But is it something like, as winemakers and as a winery like Brokenwood, that you do have to consider your clientele, how to market to them, how to talk to them, and how to kind of get men to not only accept but also to really thoroughly enjoy something like a rosé?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those really interesting things with wine. Most people either come into wine sort of through white wines, and that's their channel, and eventually they kind of, oh, reds are okay, or they come in through like heavy reds, and they kind of work their way backwards, and they're like, oh, whites are still a little bit aggressive, but I can get there like with some wines, or some people never get to that point. They just stick with what they knew that they loved. But rosato and rosés generally is sort of this weird middle ground where it's kind of like, is that the perfect entry point? Because it sets you up for a bit of phenolic, for a bit of texture, dryness, sort of, so you're angling towards reds, but you've also got that brightness and the acidity and that crisp sort of crunch on the palate that takes you towards whites. And so we probably need to aim at men more, I guess, on because it is that perfect dividing line kind of between the two. But Barbie's done a lot for and the FIFA Women's World Cup has shown how popular things that women are doing are being embraced by men just as much. So rosé is the next step.
Well, let's talk about that, Kate, because I say this to people all the time. I think that a lot of my friends assume that the wine industry is completely dominated by men, and in some respects it is. But as you know, like so many of my friends in winemakers are women, because women have, as you know, women actually scientifically have better palates. Also better taste in everything, really, fashion, all sorts of stuff. Let's be honest. But as a winemaker, you've been the winemaker of Brokenwood for about 4 or 5 years or something.
Yeah, winemaker 4 years.
Yep,
something like that. And I've been here for 8 years total. So
yeah, and is it getting easier? Is it hard, or is it there is a real divide, obviously, in the genders in so many industries? Is it still really prevalent in the wine industry?
It's nowhere near as prevalent now as it was even when I was finishing uni. The opportunities for women, I think, are much more present. But at the same stage, I just did a sort of future leaders course, and my article over the whole thing was how to sort of keep people engaged and interested in the wine industry and not lose them to other industries or aspects of the wine industry. And one of the points within that was at uni at the moment, it's pretty much 50-50 on gender for winemaking. Immediately upon graduating from uni, that goes to about 70-30, male to female. And then when you move into management, it goes to sort of 80-20. And when you move up to sort of CEOs and like chief winemakers, it's and general managers, it's sort of 90-10. So and that reflects time, right? So eventually we'll get there, but it's still a slow moving beast.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, for somebody who's kind of entered and been educated through wine and through a different path, a different journey, not through wine making, but just through WSET and studying it. Almost all of my, in fact, I'd say the vast majority of my educators have all been women. They've all been women. I've learned more from wine from women. 80% of what I've learned from wine has been directly from women. And it's to me, it's actually kind of weird. Yeah, I know. Like I look at people like Sue Bell, who and have given me insights into wine and knowledge around it. It doesn't seem like there's a disparaged gender issue in the wine industry, because there's so many, like Brokenwood, and I wanted to kind of lead it back to you as a winemaker, not just as a female winemaker. You coming in as a winemaker at such a heritage brand, like a household brand with so much prestige to it, like Brokenwood. Obviously, you're going to feel a bit of pressure there, but is there a pressure to kind of, because of those, like Graveyard and these like really kind of high echelon red wines and white wines as well with the Semillon? Is there a pressure or a desire as an incoming winemaker to respect the past, but also to look at the future and to lead forward and say, all right, this is awesome for us, but the Hunter Valley and us as part of it, we need to kind of progress and move forward, and this is how it's going to look, and this is what it might look like with something like a Rosato.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the big buzzword in the wine industry at the moment is sustainability, but that's should be a buzzword for everyone in every industry, because you all want to be successful and able to continue doing what you're doing into the future. When it comes to wine, there is such a heritage in the Hunter Valley that you have to respect it. You can't come in and say, you know what, we're going to pull out all of the Semillon and Shiraz. Because why would you? Because they're producing these beautiful wines. I've had the luxury of being able to taste some of the sort of 1965 Shirazes that come off some of the vineyards that we now take fruit from, which is just so cool. And same with Semillon in the region. There's this history of these great wines being produced, and wines that do last over time as well and stand up. So you have to respect that. But within that, there's no reason that sort of style can't shift. And certainly at Brokenwood, there's been a huge shift away from, I guess, in the sort of 90s, early 2000s, there was a lot more new oak being used. We're really reining that back. We want the fruit to be at the fore of everything we do. But also in the vineyards, Brokenwood luckily is in a position where we managed to buy Oakey Creek Vineyard 2 years ago. So that shores up some of our supply, because we all want great grapes. And so it's only harder to get them. But Oakey Creek also then has some other sort of small plantings of little varieties that we can play with there and see how they go, and be open to sort of new styles and new wines without sacrificing what we know works so well as well.
Yeah, it is a bit of a balance between the old and the new. So what wine grape variety or wine style is kind of exciting at the moment? What are you playing with? Is there, or do you have a particularly favorite grape as well? Like, was there a gateway grape for you? Because for me, it was Sangiovese. Without doubt, it was Sangiovese. And I still absolutely love it. But it was like the gateway wine where I went, wine's good. Wine is acceptable now. Before that, it was really just Wild Turkey and Coke and beer.
Good.
And then I decided to be an adult, and for me it was Sangiovese. But what about for yourself? Was there a gateway wine for that you tasted that brought you into the wine industry? And now what are you kind of looking to work with and create? What's kind of getting you excited?
I guess there wasn't really a gateway wine. I actually started studying winemaking and didn't drink wine at all at the time.
Wow.
So it was a bit of an unusual pathway.
Haven't you fallen off the wagon?
Yeah. Yeah. I quickly learned the error of my ways. But my like go-to wine would be Chardonnay. I think it's so versatile, it's so delicious. You can get all different styles for if you want sort of a bigger, richer thing or a tight lean something, then it can kind of suit all of your wants and desires. And then in terms of cool things, I guess we've got a little bit of Cab Franc planted on the Oak Tree vineyard that I've kind of squirreled away to have a little bit of a play with for my own, because I think I mean, it's a variety I love to drink, and I'd love to be able to play with sort of making some of that juicier, I guess, easy drinking, but still kind of crunchy and interesting styles of wines that come from Cab Francs. And I would love to get my hands on some Fiano or some Chenin Blanc, because they're two varieties that I think Australia is sort of poised to do really well with.
Because of the climate, Kate, because of the change in climate, Fiano obviously, and Chenin obviously can handle a bit of heat as well.
Yeah, and they've got that texture to them that sort of just makes them a bit more interesting and a bit more sort of, you get diverse styles within both of those. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Are you trying, when you say trying to get your hands on it, are you're looking
well, like everyone wants to, right? So and there's not that much planted, so you sort of have to bide your time and just ask around in enough channels and pester people enough to get, even for a company like Brokenwood, getting our hands on good quality fruit is difficult and just getting harder. We were making a really interesting Riesling out of Canberra that now we can't make anymore because the vineyard owners keep it to make for themselves, which is completely fair. But that's part of the reason why I think wine businesses are investing in vineyards more and more, because you have to have your own fruit resource or it can disappear.
Yeah, so that way you can have consistency as well, because sometimes people can make wine for a few years and then it disappears and people come to love it, and then all of a sudden it's not available as well. That's what happens. Exactly. Kate, I can't take up most of your day because unlike me, you've got a proper job. So
although
I know, right? I don't know.
Quite enjoyable sitting out here at the moment.
I know Kate's going to be quite busy at the winery today, and I'm looking there going, she's not busy. She's not busy. That's her second bottle. She's into it. What I want to do, Kate, I'm going to give you some a quick fire. This is like a half a dozen quick fire questions, and you can just blurt them out. Don't think too much. First answer is the best answer. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Why is Australia the best wine nation on earth?
Variety. All different climates, all different grapes. We can do it all, whatever you want, it's somewhere here.
Yeah, 100%. I often say that to people genuinely in Australia, is that if you only had one country you could ever take wine from again, it'd be Australia. It's probably not South Africa. I'm sorry to any big lovers of Pinotage. It's not going to happen. Next question. Oh, this is a tricky one. Coffee, wine, sport, beer, hard drugs, and pasta. You can only have two. Go.
Pasta, 100%. And wine, I guess.
Oh, okay.
I went to the Matildas game on Monday night though, so I'm sort of on like cuspy sport would be, I'm enjoying it a lot at the moment.
It's a hard one. When I ask myself that, I go, I mean, obviously pasta and hard drugs, because nothing goes better than the drug ecstasy and some ravioli, I'm sure. So each to their own. Next question. What variety are we not drinking enough of in Australia?
Semillon.
Of course you're going to say that. But you know what?
Obviously.
I know. So, anybody who's viewing is not familiar with Semillon. Obviously, the Hunter Valley is world renowned outside of France, particularly is one of the great Semillon growing regions. And I I've had a mixed relationship with Semillon because many years ago I didn't like it. I found the acid just too zingy, too tight, and too, a battery. And now I've really come to enjoy, and genuinely through some of the Brokenwood wines, I've really come to enjoy Semillon, and I find that acid super refreshing, and I like it. Like, for me, that's actually a great alternative to Sauvignon Blanc, which I don't tend to enjoy. It's a bit too floral and aromatic for my palate. And it is something that I think, people may need to rediscover. Would you reckon that could happen with Semillon?
Definitely. And I think, like, probably what you say is a really accurate representation of what Semillon has done in the last sort of 20 years, probably, as well, in that it was prized as being battery acid. I remember there's a quote from Dan Sims, I think, said it when he was judging at the Hunter Wine Show. And he was like, now taste through, and if you have to squeeze your eyes, it's gold. And if you have to immediately spit it out and you sort of sneeze, then it's probably the trophy winner.
Trophy.
Like,
yeah.
Acid is the key. And I don't think that's the case anymore. There's really been that, like, just discovery or rediscovery that Semillon should have fruit on its bones as well.
Yes.
Like, it shouldn't just be this acid line driving through the middle.
Yeah.
It can be that, but to be really great, it should have more than that. And I think that's something girls have done really well for a really long time, and everyone's maybe just catching up on that. But certainly, like, those easy drinking, approachable young wines are delicious.
It's so good in summer, and so good with food, like just with with fish and stuff like that. It's such a great alternative to Sauvignon Blanc. For people who are drinking Sauvignon Blanc, my opinions on it. Let it go. Stop it.
But it's the same. It's that safe thing, right? It's easy because you know what the profile is going to be. You can buy
grab it out of the fridge,
the shelf, and it's not a risk. Whereas everything else is, you need a little bit more trust.
But this is what I try to tell friends and family and anybody else listening to it as well, Kate, is that sometimes trying something new is actually trying something old. Like try rediscovering Australian Chardonnay. It's different to what it was 20 years ago. Semillon is different to what it was even, like, I remember maybe 6 to 8 years ago when it was screaming acid all the time. And now, like you say, it's got a bit more richness and fruit to it. I think it's great. So anybody who's watching and you haven't had Semillon in a while, number one, it's called Semillon and not Semillon. You don't call it.
No.
We'll get into the whole Shiraz debate. All right. If you weren't making wine, Kate, would you make beer, gin, whiskey, or another?
Probably gin, I think.
Because there's no effort and you can still sell it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, then I'd make no alcohol gin.
True that.
I enjoy gin a lot. So yeah, I like to make something that I can then just take home and drink at home. That would be my go.
And a lot of winemakers, I find, actually, that's the spirit of choice. I find a lot of winemakers really enjoy gin. It's probably those aromatics and, there's so much expression.
Yeah.
What's your go-to hangover cure?
Ooh, hydrolyte, always. The night before you go to sleep. So
Corrective strike.
Yeah, quite often we'll do the hydrolyte into the glass of water by the bed so that it's pre-prepped.
Yep.
Get home, scull that, and then next day, the Brokenwood tradition is sort of a bacon and egg roll and some of our sticky wicket Semillon.
Oh yeah, yum. Sticky Semillon, yum.
Yeah, whole heap of sugar, a very small amount of alcohol, and it kind of just cruises you back into the day quite nicely.
So if anybody's wondering how they do it at a winery, they just have more wine. So just the answer always seems to be wine to all the questions. Kate, last one in the quick fire round. Would you rather puke ouzo and Coke or drink a Guinness with an oyster in it?
Guinness with an oyster, no doubt.
Really?
Yeah, I really have a strong aversion to ouzo, like Galliano, all of those sort of spirits. Just 17 and at the Alexandra Hills Hotel in Redland Bay. And
oh God, Queenslanders on ouzo. The Queenslander on ouzo. My God, that's practically a weapon of mass destruction. Just go. They're a Queenslander and they're drinking ouzo. That's a hard no.
Yeah. So
that's a great one.
No worries.
Oh, see, I like oysters in almost every form, and I love oysters in a shot glass with some Riesling. That's a wonderful thing to try. Yeah, but when I hear about, you do something like that too.
We do a vintage tradition, the oyster with the last year's Semillon as the sort of replacement for the lime juice.
Yeah,
and that's
great.
Our vintage tradition when we get the first lot of fruit in.
What a great thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Nice little tip there. I don't think I could. I love Guinness and I love oysters, but maybe it's a bit too much. Kate Sturgis, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure to have a chat to you and to talk about this wonderful wine, Brokenwood Rosado. Give it a try. You can find it in bottle shops, but the best thing to do is just buy it straight from the winery, because that way you can buy a case of it with no regret. So
yeah,
it's great stuff. Kate, thank you so much for your time. I'll let you get back to the winery and best of luck.
Awesome. Thanks, Marek.
Good health. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, Kate. Appreciate it.